You go out to check your chickens on a cold winter morning, and you see them all huddled up in the corner, looking like a big ball of feathers. What if I told you that might not be what you think it is? What if it's a desperate signal that your flock is in trouble?
Have you ever slipped on the ice with the whole world watching? Tried to be alone, you're surrounded by life. Not looking for a disaster, just the kind of day that I'm after. But I want more, I want more, I want freedom. I want more, I want more, I want nature. I want more, I want more, I want Alaska. Let's go.
Today we're going to kind of cut through the noise of the 5 biggest and most dangerous myths about winter chicken care. I'll show you what your chickens are really trying to tell you in the cold and give you some no-nonsense solutions to get them from surviving to thriving. Surviving and thriving means 2 totally different things to a chicken. Let's talk about surviving first. A surviving chicken is in energy saving mode. They're constantly huddled together, they're all puffed up, and they're barely moving. They might be losing weight. You may notice that their combs are pale, their combs and their wattles are pale. And in serious cases, they start getting black on their combs, they're getting frostbite. And your egg production, we're not even going to talk about that because that's long gone. The flock is stressed and they're burning calories just to stay alive. If that's all they're doing is huddled up in the corner and they're not moving, they're cold stressed. Thriving chicken, on the other hand, looks exactly like you'd hope. They're active, they're engaged, they're healthy, they're scratching around, they're interacting with each other, they're shiny. That's Justice. He wants to talk. And with the right setup, even in the wintertime, your chickens can continue to lay. The first myth we're going to talk about is huddling is always a good sign. It's a big one, and it's really a half-truth, which makes it so risky. Yeah, the chickens do huddle together for warmth, but if that's all they do, always in a motionless huddle, in a corner, that's not a cozy get-together. It's a red flag for cold stress is what it is. They're burning a mass amount of energy just to fight the cold. What's the fix? Well, here's solution number 1, the deep litter method. So the deep litter method is where you, like in the fall of the year, typically is when you start it, is you get your coop all cleaned out, and then you put a nice 6 to 12 inch layer of bedding like pine shavings or straw in the floor of your coop. And then about every week or so, you take your pitchfork and you stir it up. You stir those droppings up into it and then put another layer of bedding on top of it. What that does is you got the carbon-rich material on the coop floor from the bedding, from the pine shavings or the straw, and then your chickens do their business on it. And, putting their droppings on it, and that's a nitrogen-rich dropping, and it's mixing with the carbon on the floor, and it's creating a heat. And it can, it'll gently and slowly warm your coop up from the bottom up in the wintertime. I mean, it's not going to raise your coop up 20 degrees by any means, but every little bit helps. Here's myth number 2. The coop must be warm and sealed. In a well-meaning attempt to keep your flock toasty, people do 2 incredibly risky things. They put a heat lamp in their coop, and they seal their coop up tighter than a Tupperware container. In doing so, they're accidentally creating a death trap is what they're doing. Let's talk about the heat first. Heat lamps are the leading cause of coop fires. You got a hot bulb, you got flammable bedding, You got all kinds of dust from the birds. You got the birds flapping their wings. It's a disaster waiting to happen. What could go wrong with that? I do heat my coop. Some will say if you provide heat, the birds won't be acclimated to the cold. If something would happen and your heater goes out and your birds are used to being heated and all of a sudden it drops down really cold, it's going to harm your birds. That's probably true. We live in the interior of Alaska, and this morning it was 36 below zero. That's way too cold for any chicken anywhere. It's a heated debate, on social media and places like that about don't heat your chicken coop, don't heat your chicken coop. If I lived in an area that wasn't as harsh as the interior of Alaska, that you were in the 20s during the day and say you were in the teens, single digits or so at night, I wouldn't worry about it because the chickens can handle that. But when we get 30 to 50 below here. And like this morning, it was 36 below zero. That's way too cold for the chickens. I don't care. I'll do me and you do you. But I don't use a heat lamp in my coop because I think they're too risky and it's too risk of a fire. And so let me show you what I use for heating my chicken coop. This is our heater that we have mounted on the outside of our coop. We have it in an insulated box. You can see it's a diesel heater. It's from Vibor. And we've got it sitting in here. So the heater's here. It's got an air intake. And we got it set up on an inverter that we put the positive and negative cables onto. And it plugs in to the electric. When we were living off grid, we used the same heater, but we had it hooked to a 12-volt battery. And that's actually our backup. If something would happen to go wrong with because we're on the grid now, and if our power would go out, we can hook this right up to a 12-volt battery, and our heater will keep running for our coop. And then it pipes into the coop through here. And it has the exhaust coming out here from the diesel. And then here it has a fuel tank and we run diesel in it. And it's got a fuel pump. That's that clicking that you hear. The fuel pump is right here. And it pumps the fuel up into the heater and blows it into the coop. Now, I'm not talking that I keep my coop, a balmy 70, 80 degrees like a July summer day. That's not the case. My coop right now, as I'm making this, is 12 degrees. So you can probably see, I'm dressed warm. You can probably see the stave. I just take the edge off of them so they're thriving and they're not just surviving in the cold. Like I said, being in the interior of Alaska, in our harsh environment, it's way too cold for the birds. Another thing I want to touch on is, as a side note here, while I'm thinking about it, is I do put light in my coop. And not so much to keep my chickens laying eggs and forcing them to lay eggs. That's really not the meaning behind it. They are laying eggs. Supplemental light is helping that, but that isn't the only reason I've got lights in the coop. Up here in the interior of Alaska, right now we have 4 hours and 8 minutes of daylight a day. And our sun doesn't come high up into the sky. It sits low and we kind of get a cross light. So it's a dim light during the day for those 4 hours. If I did not have a supplemental light in my coop at this time, because it's way too cold for my chickens to go outside. They won't even go out. And I don't let them out. I keep them locked up right now because it's just too cold. I don't want to cool the coop down. They would be in the dark like 24 hours a day. like dark. If I didn't have the lights on here and here in the coop, they would never see anything that resembled any kind of daylight. And that it can't be healthy for them either, because they can't live like a bat. The second part of this death trap is sealing the coop up tight to keep the warmth in. The real enemy in the coop isn't necessarily the cold, but it's the moisture. Chickens release a surprising amount of moisture through their breathing and their droppings. Their droppings are probably 75 to 80% water. In a tight sealed coop, all that moisture is trapped. It's a recipe for respiratory illness. Your coop is going to smell like ammonia in the inside. And it's a direct cause of frostbite on your combs and your feet. The moisture, especially like at night when it gets colder, that moisture, that's how you get frost at night, is the moisture in the air settles down on stuff from the colder air, and it creates a frost. Well, it does the same thing on your chickens. If your chicken coop is too moist, that moisture settles down on top of your exposed areas. And sometimes you'll see frost on chickens' feathers. If that was skin, that'd be frostbite. But they'll get it on the top of their combs and they'll get it on their feet. A chicken can handle cold and dry much better than they can handle cold and damp. And that brings us to solution number 2, smart ventilation. You got to know the difference between ventilation and a draft. I got a visual here I'm going to show you that is really good for showing where the drafts are and where ventilation is in a coop. Ventilation is an air exchange which is above the chickens' heads, like at the roof line of your coop. What you want to do is you want to have an openings at the roof line of your coop, cover it with a hardware cloth so your little rodents and predators can't get in there. And because the warm air and the moist air is going to rise up to the top, and it's going to escape out the vents in the top of your coop. But that's going to be that escaping up there, and that air moving is above your chickens' heads. So it's not a draft. A draft is like, you can have, say, if you can see in this visual I have here, is you leave your little coop door open that they go in and outside, and you got your vents on the roof line, but the air comes in from the coop door on the bottom, and it comes up across the chickens because the vents are sucking it up to the top. Well, what that does is that creates called a draft, and it goes right over the top of your chickens. What a draft does with your chickens is it blows on their feathers, because chickens kind of foof up a little bit. That's their insulation, and they trap their heat in their feathers from their body, and that they stay warm that way. If you got a draft or a breeze blowing on them, it blows that heat out of their feathers, and they're not retaining heat, and then they're cold. A good way to tell if you have enough ventilation is if you walk into your coop and you see moisture build up on your windows. You got frost in the inside of your windows, and you can tell that there's a moisture buildup in there. That's a sign that you got too much moisture in your coop. Or if you come in and your coop smells like ammonia, smells real strong, that's too much moisture in your coop. You got to get some ventilation at that point. It's just a breeding ground for respiratory problems in your birds. In that, now that we're here, I'm going to give you a little bonus tip on perches in the cold weather. What you want to do is you want to use a 2x4, and you want to put it the wide side up. And what that does is it allows your chicken to roost flat-footed. And then when they sit down on their feet, their feathers in their body cover all their toes. Versus a little round perch, like tree limbs or a dowel, they have to put their little feet around it. And when they sit down, half of their toes are not covered by anything, and they can get frostbite on their toes. So that's just a little extra tip for, helping to keep their feet warm. And this brings us to myth number 3. Chickens eat the same amount of food in the winter as they do in the summer. It's a mistake that can leave your chickens malnourished. If you were doing jumping jacks all day long, every day, you would need a lot more calories. Maintaining their high body temperature of 105 or so plus, it takes a massive amount of energy to maintain that. If they only get the same amount of food in the winter as they eat in the summer, they're going to burn through their fat reserves and fighting the cold, and they're going to lose weight. So solution number 3 for that is fuel your furnace. Keep your chickens' food full at all times. Don't ever let them run empty. They're naturally going to eat more food when it's cold. But here's a little secret weapon. In the mornings, like right away in the morning, give them some high energy scratch grains. Like cracked corn is good. Sunflower seeds are good. Suet is good. Something that is slower to digest. And then again, like right before they go to roost at night, before they go to bed at night, give them a little bit more so that they have a full crop of that stuff at night. And as they digest, it creates a metabolic heat for them. And that brings us to myth number 4. As long as they have water, they're good. That sounds about right. Everything needs water, right? Until you go out on a cold morning and your water container is frozen like a solid block of ice. They're not drinking the ice. Dehydration is more of an immediate threat to the chickens than hunger really is, especially in the dry winter air. Hydration is really critical for their metabolic digestion. So here's solution number 4. If you're on the grid and you have power in your chicken coop, a heated dish, like a heated dog bowl, is really kind of a gold standard in the cold weather. I have a heated dish in my coop, and even we've been as low as 39 below so far this year. The water hasn't froze. And that just guarantees that they have water all the time. But if you're off the grid, like we used to be, you really are the water heater. What you're going to need to do is you need to go out in the morning and you're going to take them out fresh water. I always gave them warm water, and not hot, but warm. And again, like later in the day toward late afternoon, early evening, I'd go out and give them some more water. I always use those black rubber dishes because they're flexible and you can stomp the ice out of them fairly easy. The 5th and final myth number 5. The chickens should stay in the coop all the time in the winter. That's not really true. They might not want to come out. When there's snow on the ground, it's really not the cold that is bothering them about not coming out. They don't like that weird feeling of that snow on their feet. And so what you can do is you can take like straw or hay or, whatever you have, leaves, and, sprinkle, make them like a little patio out there, a straw patio on the snow. You don't have to shovel the runoff. Just put it on top of the snow. And, they'll come out and walk on the straw because they don't like that feeling of that snow on their feet. And to encourage them a little bit more to come out and toss some treats on the straw. My chickens will do anything for a mealworm. I shake that bag and they will come no matter what they're doing. And I throw some mealworms out for them, and then it encourages them to come outside and they pick for the mealworms. if you keep them locked up in the coop all the time, like weeks and weeks on end, it creates a boredom with them. And out of that boredom, they can start developing some nasty habits, like feather picking, bullying, egg eating, stuff like that that you really don't want your chickens to get into a habit of doing. It just keeps them a little more sane if they can get out of the coop a little bit. Now, here in the interior, we've been running really cold this week, and we haven't been above 30 below during the day, and we've been almost 40 below at night. And during this time, I'm not encouraging my chickens to come outside because, for one thing, it is really cold. And I don't want to open up my coop that much because I don't want to lose the heat that I have in my coop right now. But as soon as it warms up and it gets back up into normal temperatures, anything above 0, I'll encourage them to come outside because it's good for them. So, we can really forget about the myths that you hear. It comes down to 5 simple shifts. One is the deep litter method, to generate a little bit of heat coming up off the floor. Number 2 is good ventilation in your coop to keep it dry, to help try to prevent frostbite. 3 is fuel their body a little bit more with some extra grains, like the cracked corn, black oil sunflower seeds, maybe some suet. The 4th one, provide enough water. Water is really critical for them, for their digestion and their well-being, just like it is for everything else. And give them a reason to go outside with their little straw patio to relieve boredom and prevent bad habits from developing. When you do these things, you can really feel comfortable that your flock is going to be thriving in the winter instead of just surviving. Now, I want to learn a little bit from you guys. Let me know what kind of tricks that you do with your chickens in the wintertime. You can leave your comments down below, and maybe we can just all learn a few more things and a few more tricks to keep our chickens happy and healthy through the winter. Thank you guys for coming along, and I hope that some of this may have helped a little bit with the chickens in the wintertime. We appreciate all of you, and stay safe, stay warm, and have just a blessed Christmas. And we'll catch you on the next one.
Have you ever watched the wind blow? When you got no place to go, turned around and let it take you where it goes. It's a magical place in Alaska, just the kind of day that I'm after. Everybody running wild, you got the world on trial. Well, it's a magical place in Alaska, but I want more.